Well, it's been almost 36 years since mushroom hunters exploring a wooded area north of Elma found the remains of a woman with a gunshot wound to her head. She remains unidentified to this day.
In 2020, the Grays Harbor Sheriff's Office reached out to the DNA Doe Project for their help in this case, and now with still no match, the nonprofit is asking for your help this morning. And joining us to continue the conversation is Jennifer Randolph, the Executive Director of Case Management and Operations and the lead in this particular Grays Harbor Jane Doe case. Jennifer, good morning to you.
Good morning, Tyrah and Steve. Thank you so much for having me.
It's nice to have you with us this morning. So let's go back to the late 1980s when the woman's remains were found. What actually happened, and why did the Sheriff's Office ask for the DNA Doe Project's help in this?
So yes, as you mentioned, this case dates back to about October 1988, and some hunters were in a wooded area just off a logging road a little bit north of Elma in Grays Harbor County, and they came across some human remains. Those were later determined to be from a female, probably in her late 20s. She was of slight build. She wasn't very tall. They're estimating she was only between 4'10" and 5'2", maybe about 100 pounds. And again, late 20s, but possibly as old as 45, because they're only estimates that they're able to make. They tried at the time all the usual ways of identifying her to no avail. So when a case goes cold like that and none of the usual ways of identification pan out, often agencies will come to us as sort of a last resort. And we are able to use the power of DNA and traditional genealogy research to often produce a lead for our partner agencies that they can then confirm to make an identification. One of the first pieces of information that we were able to get from the DNA that helps a little bit is to determine that this woman was likely of Southeastern or Eastern Asian descent. So that means she could be from Japan, China, Vietnam, Cambodia, and many other countries in that area. But that gave us a little bit of a clue of what her ancestry may be.
So many unanswered questions still. Jennifer, in a release from earlier this month, you said this case is one of your most challenging ever. I'm assuming because all of the different steps you have to take. Can you expand more on why this is so challenging?
Yes, and this really is a very challenging case. So there are three ingredients that sort of make investigative genetic genealogy, the technique we use, successful for an identification like this. We need to be able to get an adequate DNA profile from the remains to be able to upload into the databases that we're allowed to use for this type of work. So that's one ingredient. Once the profile is uploaded, it is compared to all the other profiles in the databases, many of them from the public, and we need to get some matches or DNA relatives who are, within a reasonably closely related range. We're thinking maybe second, third cousin, or even more closely related. And then the last ingredient to make this technique successful is that we need to be able to access records to build the family trees of those DNA matches. So in this case, each of those three pieces was very challenging. It was hard to get a good DNA sample from the remains. There was a lot of degradation and contamination. We were fortunately able to eventually get a profile, but it was not of the greatest quality. So we need to keep that, in our minds when we interpret how it works in the database. When we did upload the profile, however, there were no matches in that sort of second to third cousin range. They were all very, very distant, more like fourth, fifth, sixth cousin. And that's because there aren't many people from these regions, Southeast Asia and Eastern Asia, who have uploaded into the database. They're just very underrepresented. So with very distant matches like that, they really aren't what we call workable. And lastly, even if we did have more closely related individuals matching to our Jane Doe, it would be very hard for us to access the records we need, given the countries, that she's possibly from, to build the family trees. So this is a case where our investigative genetic genealogy at this point in time isn't really able to be used. And this is where your viewers may come in to be able to help us.
I was going to say, is there a way that the public can help in the efforts here?
Absolutely. I think the first thing your viewers might be able to do is, go to our website, find the page she's on, and share it. Share it on social media, share it with your family and friends, share it in your community. Someone out there probably knows this woman or is missing her, and if we can just get this information in front of the right eyes, we might be able to get a break in the case. Another thing people might want to consider is if they have ancestry from these areas, they might want to put their profile into the databases that we're able to use so that possibly we could get closer DNA matches. And if you go to our website and click on the YouTube button, you can see some videos that explain how to do that. And of course, if anyone does have any information, they could share it with the Grace County Sheriff or share it with us at the DNA Doe Project.
Jennifer, can you talk with us about the important work the DNA Doe Project does and how the organization helps law enforcement agencies and families get answers in cases? You kind of talked about this at the beginning, how you and law enforcement kind of work together. Is there anything else you'd like to mention about that?
Yeah, so we've been around since late 2017 doing this work. We've really been a trailblazer with the technique. We are a nonprofit organization, and we have a very large group of talented genetic genealogists who donate their time and talent to work on these cases. So that means that we can offer our services pro bono to law enforcement agencies, medical examiners, and coroners who often have these cold, unidentified human remains cases. So they can pursue our help at no cost because often they don't have the budget to pay for this kind of effort on a cold case, given all the demands they have. The other thing we do is the lab work to get that DNA profile I mentioned earlier is fairly expensive, really running into the thousands of dollars. So if an agency does not have the budget to cover those costs, we do everything we can to help cover that as well. So our mission is to really take cost out of the equation so that every Jane and John Doe out there, and there are over 50,000 in the United States alone, at least has an opportunity to be identified and the dignity of having their name restored. And of course, the other piece of this is that for these 50,000 Jane and John Does, there are 50,000 families out there wondering for years, decades, even generations, what happened to their loved one. And we can't give them the answers they're probably hoping to get, but we can at least give them answers. And I think take away the heavy weight of just not knowing what happened.
Yeah, we know that genetic genealogy, Jennifer, has been a game changer when it comes to trying to solve some of these cases. So we appreciate the work that you and the project does. So thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
If you'd like to get more information on that case she was talking about and the DNA Doe Project, we made it easy for you. Just scan the QR code on your screen here. That will take you directly to komonews.com/hotlinks, and there you'll find a link to the DNA Doe Project's website. We were talking with Jennifer during the commercial break, and what's hard is with a lot of these law enforcement agencies that are out there, there's cutbacks because of financial reasons. And a lot of times, units like the cold case unit, which solve cold cases or helps in cases like these, is one of the first to go. And those cases just kind of sit on a shelf for a while those families who have been looking for answers, that wait continues. And so this organization definitely helps with trying to bring some closure to all those families that are out there.
And it sounds like there's a lot the public can do to help out too, just by simply spreading the word and checking out the resources on their website.
Absolutely. One little tidbit could make a huge difference.